afternoon, buenas tardes, good evening, buenas noches, whenever it is that you get to see this. My name is Miss Adri and I am here to teach you some stuff. And today we are going to be talking about drama. And no, I'm not talking about the drama that happened today in math class. I am talking about the theater, darling. So, what is drama anyway? Well, drama is a story that is being enacted on stage for a live audience. We can do this on TV, we can do this on the stage, but for the purposes of this video, we are going to be concentrating on the actual theater. Okay? Now, the word drama has its origins in ancient Greece and it comes from the Greek verb dran, I think that's how you pronounce it, which means to do. And some of the earliest plays that we know about come from the 5th century BCE, that's before the Common Era, and they are produced for festivals to honor the god Dionysus. I'm going to go into that in a little bit. The purpose of a drama is to entertain, to provoke thought and emotion, to present a visual and oral experience for the audience, and to critique something from society. Because all of these has to have a purpose. Now, inside of drama, we have what is known as the dramatic struggle. Let me see if I can wiggle my way here. No, can't. That's okay. Now, the conflict, as we know, is the struggle of opposing forces, can happen between the characters or forces within my play. And the conflict can develop whether my characters want the same thing or different things, between my character and his or her circumstances, or because my character or the character is torn by competing desires. Now, just like in the elements of a short story, there are different types of conflict. The most well-known ones are the ones we have here. Person against self, person against person against nature, and person against society. And you'll find that in many of the Greek plays, it's person against society and person against self. As I mentioned, we have to travel and think of ancient Greece when we talk about the origins of drama and the theater. Here I have a little bit of a picture in one of the Greek theaters. Attending the theater for the ancient Greeks was considered an act of worship. So it was very important for people to show up to the theater because it was basically like going to church. Many of the plays that they were going to see were either a comedy or a tragedy, and similar to Shakespeare's time, there were either flags or symbols of what was being presented. As I mentioned, Dionysus was very important because, as the god of wine and fertility, he was worshipped in the theater. So, what they would do is that they would have an altar prepared for Dionysus and they would have different offerings before the actual play started. Many of the actors, well, not many of the actors, all of the actors were male. So sorry, Juliet was a girl, just like in Shakespearean times. The tradition of women not being able to join the theater was not broken until the Victorian or Edwardian age, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit earlier. But all of the actors wore masks to portray different characters. Nowadays, we have the concept of using a wig. This is not a wig, this is my real hair. We have the concept of makeup to transform ourselves into the different characters. Back then, they didn't do that. They would only use a little bit of makeup in the eyes to kind of like make the eyes sort of bulge out a little bit more. And they would wear a mask. And many of the tragedies that were presented during this time were based on different legends or myths. Now, here in this little picture, we have a rudimentary model of what the Greek theater sort of was organized like. It was always performed outdoors. And you might be thinking, teacher, how did they hear? Well, that's the cool thing about an amphitheater. It is designed for sound to travel upwards. Here we have the orchestra, which is where the chorus was located. I'm going to get into the chorus in just a bit. We have the theatron, which is, as you can see here, little seats. This is where the audience would sit. Here we have the Skene, which was the building directly behind the stage. It was usually decorated as a palace, a building, forest, depending on the play. And we have the Parodos here on the corners. And this is where the chorus and some of the actors would like crisscross and go to their different cues. It's very similar to how modern theaters are built nowadays, except that some of the names have changed and they mean something else, but it's very similar. Here we have a recreation of kind of what it would look like to a much larger scale. Here we have the Skene, here we have the Proskenion, the altar to Dionysus, the Parodos, the Theatron, and the orchestra. Okay? The word Proskenion it evolved into the Spanish word proscenio, and it's one of the parts of where the actors will place themselves waiting for their cue. Here, oops, you can notice, I went back accidentally, you can notice all of the different people that are sitting. I don't believe that this is when the play had already started because the altar was still, in full motion, but it can be said that it was quite large to a huge scale. Now, thus chorus. The chorus, I would say, are just as important, even maybe more important than the actors, because the chorus were in charge of basically commenting during the performance. They were very perceptive in comedies. They were meant to be funny, but in tragedies, they were meant to serve kind of like the conscience of the audience. So they would kind of guide the audience through what was going on. Sometimes they would stop kind of like talking to the audience and they would interact with the different actors. They would advise them. There was a part of the chorus which was known as the choreagus, which was the leader of the chorus, and sometimes that leader of the chorus was the one that was in charge of talking to the main characters and perhaps advising the main characters. As I mentioned, Greeks used masks to cover up their appearances and to basically show which character was which. Here I have three different masks for you to contemplate. These two, I believe, are women. This is a man. And just like the actors, the chorus would use a mask, but everybody would have the same mask. So it was kind of like this sameness to represent the chorus. The more masks you had, the more roles you had. It was extremely difficult, I am sure. But since I mentioned previously all of the actors were men, it was necessary to have the mask in order to portray female characters. In drama, there are some important terms that we need to talk about. There is irony, dramatic irony, and catharsis. Irony is basically the incongruity between what might be expected and what actually happens. Sometimes this can be humorous. Dramatic irony comes from, drama. When the audience knows something important that the character does not know. For example, in the play Antigone, we know that Haman, which is one of the characters, dies before his mother actually finds out. So we, as the audience, are like, oh gosh, she's going to find out. And catharsis, which I'm going to go in a little bit into detail further on, is the general reaction that we as the audience are supposed to have to tragedies. And it's supposed to be a feeling of cleansing and relief. Now, comedy, which is wonderful, super fun, but very difficult to do. It is a comedy. Yeah, sorry. A comedy is a play that ends happily. Yay! And the plot usually centers around a romantic conflict. Classic plot that we see in movies and TV, in the theater. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy wins girl back. In a comedy, the actors, the characters, they can be anybody. It can be a king, it can be a queen, it could be the chef, it could be peasants. It doesn't really matter because comedy is for everybody. But comedy, is very difficult to do. It is very difficult to do because making people laugh is easy. Making people laugh intelligently while critiquing something, which is what happens in a lot of comedies, that is the difficult part. Um, Comic complications always occur before the conflict of the play is resolved. And in many cases, I would say most cases, with the ancient plays that are comedies, it would end with a wedding and people living happily ever after. In modern comedies, it's similar to old comedies, but sometimes like the genders are reversed, the romantic plot pattern sometimes is different, etc. But it follows basically the same structure. Tragedy, though, is very difficult for many reasons. I would say comedy sometimes is more difficult, but tragedy, it's quite interesting to behold. A tragedy, which is the opposite of comedy, is when a play ends unhappily. Many, if not most, classical Greek tragedies deal with some serious themes. What's right? What's wrong? Justice? What's injustice? Life? Death? Tragedies pit the limitations of us humans against larger forces of destiny. Where does it come from? Well, there were many Greek um, writers. I'm going to use the word writers because many times it was spoken and it wasn't like put down for a while. But the Greek philosopher Aristotle first determined that tragedy, he coined the phrase or the concept tragedy in his books Poetics, which was written around 330 BCE. And he said that a tragedy had to have six parts: plot, which we know is the events of the story; character, what the story is about and all the different people that are there; thought, diction, how it's mentioned, thought is what we're thinking; spectacle, how it's represented; and melody, because many times these plays had musical accompaniment. Inside of my tragedies, we have what is known as my tragic hero. This tragic hero is basically the protagonist. Usually, and especially in the ancient plays and Shakespearean plays, my tragic hero is of noble birth and in many ways is admirable. The tragic hero is someone that we as the audience should look up to as somebody that is superior to us, that be in thought, that be in mind, that be in spirit, that be in nobility, etc. My tragic hero is nearly perfect, and we identify with this tragic hero. I will give you an example. One of my favorite ancient Greek plays is Antigone, which has to do with the daughter of a king whose brothers decide that they are going to fight basically against each other. I don't want to reveal the whole plot, but they're going to fight against each other. One is fighting for the city of Thebes, which is where they're from, and the other one is fighting against. When both of them die, her king slash uncle, decides the one that fought for Thebes, he is going to receive a hero's burial. The one that fought against Thebes will not receive a hero's burial. And basically, the actions of the play take, in effect when she decides that's not fair. They are both noble. They deserve to both have noble burials. And yeah, I noticed that I repeated it, so that's okay. Mistakes happen. Let's continue. My hero, my tragic hero, has what we know as a tragic flaw. As I mentioned, my hero is nearly perfect, but the hero has one flaw, one weakness, and we call this tragic flaw, fatal flaw, or hamartia. Okay? So basically, it's what makes this hero human. There is basically it because humans are not perfect. And the Greeks knew this. Also, my tragic hero has to do with the reversal of his or her fortune. The fatal flaw brings the hero down from their elevated state. Uh, Renaissance audiences during the time of Shakespeare were familiar with this card that we have here, and that is the Wheel of Fortune or fickle fate, meaning that fate is very fickle and she can turn on you at a moment's notice, and whatever went up must come down. Now, catharsis, let me move out of the way so you can see Mr. Laurence Olivier as Hamlet. We get the word catharsis, again, from our dear friend Aristotle. It comes from the word catharsis, sounds like in Spanish, and is the audience's purging of emotions through pity and fear. Okay, so that is part of how we identify with our tragic hero. We, as a spectator, are purged emotionally as a result of watching our poor hero suffer and fall. This is the reason why we cry at the movies. Good movies, not ones that don't do anything to us, to the emotions. That feeling is catharsis. It is what makes us, as the audience, feel the same emotions that our tragic hero feels and makes us identify with the tragic hero even more. Also, we have the restoration of social order because many times the tragic hero kind of like shakes things up a bit, and it includes a private and a public element. Our plays, especially during this time, cannot end until society is once again at peace. I should have put quotation marks, but at peace, because tragedies, as they are the opposite of a comedy, they do not end happily. Many times they end with the majority of the people ending their lives. Many times it ends with our tragic hero ending his or her life. Sometimes they are killed. Sometimes they kill themselves. Sometimes there is death all around them thanks to that fatal flaw. So the play basically cannot end until everything is right with the world, but at the end of a tragedy, many things are not right with the world that has been created. Now, modern dramas, which is our nowadays, are very similar to the ancient Greek plays, but some things are different. I can have a mixture between tragedy, comedy, and a mix of both. In Spanish, we call them a tragicomedia, meaning that it's tragic and it makes you laugh, etc. They focus a little bit more on personal issues, and they are usually about ordinary people. So long gone are the times of the gods and the different heroes, etc. It's more about you and me. And modern playwrights often experiment with unconventional plot structures such as long flashbacks, the usage of music, etc., to prove a point. Even though this is considered modern, music has always been present in the theater since it helps us guide whatever it is that we're doing. Now, when a play is performed, as I always tell my students, plays, yes, they are meant to be read, but mostly they are meant to be performed to an audience. And when I have a play, my playwright describes the setting and characters and actions in a certain manner, and usually it's either in brackets, like I have here, and it is in italics. And this is what the actors have to do in order to bring that character to life. Okay? So the better the actor is, the more we as the audience is going to share and respond to the experience that they are conveying. So very important, italics means that we do not say that when we are reading it aloud. It's more how we are acting. Now, inside of a play, it's very important that we remember that there are the actors, they are the ones that breathe life into the characters, the directors, which are the people that tell the actors what to do, lighting technicians, very important. I am my own lighting technician right now, as you can see. They are the ones that make sure that the actors look good, or if something is happening that they have to focus on the main actor, they shut off the lights and only certain things can be seen, and they bring a spotlight into the actor or the protagonist or whoever it is that is talking, and the stage crew, who are just as important as all these wonderful people. They are the ones that are in charge of props, bringing up and down the curtain, etc. So that's it for today's video. I hope that you liked it. My name is Miss Adri, and I hope that I taught you some stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on all of my social media. You'll see them somewhere after my face. Bye! And long live the theater, darling.